Welcome back to Adventure, everyone, and for some reason Deji has decided to sneak into the table and watch the roleplay. So Deji, you're like that, you're kind of like me, who when I was young I was actually watching people roleplay with Call of Cthulhu, and I was actually interested in that. Anyway, Tiamat's defeat in the Flying Fortress has shattered the seal of the cavern.
Thank you.
She must have sealed it out of fear of our forebears' powers. Basically, this is the last of the 4 cameo dungeons, specifically the Whisperwind Cove. And as the music that I used to speed things up tell you, it's based around Final Fantasy VI. For a record, the one that I'm using is the theme of the Phantom Forest, specifically the remix for the CDO 12.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually one of my favorite dungeon theme in general for the Sierra franchise. I argue that while I technically prefer a bit above the soundtrack of Final Fantasy VII, the soundtrack for 6 is actually very similar to it. It actually has a lot of the same notes and everything. Alright, for this particular floor, you have to put in line beavers. It's Warriors of Light, everyone.
Oh, lovely.
You have to actually put beaver. My precious giant beavers have all escaped. I had to pass, but couldn't talk. I need to lead fight.
No, do it your bloody self. They're your beavers.
Come see me once you're done, dipshit.
Which version of Final Fantasy 1 is this?
PSP.
That's considered to be the superior one, right?
Basically, so far the definitive version. There's also the mobile version, which is directly based on this one. So if you don't want to use an emulator, you could try that. It's actually fair enough, you know. But I still actually wish this was ported at least to Steam, like I said in one of the previous part Edge. Mostly because it's actually, much like a lot of PSP games, this would be actually very easy to port. And the Final Fantasy franchise for mainline titles is almost complete. It's only missing 1 and 2, technically, because everyone...
And the Cydia.
Well, I'm talking about the
main games.
About the mainline title, because of that logic, you also need potentially, for example, Tactics or the first Crystal Chronicles, for example. That
Crisis Core.
That too, but you get what I mean. Is that just for the core, you know, the mainline robust titles?
That's the thing, that Crisis Core is on a copyright limbo. So
that too, mostly because the actor used for the likenesses of one of the characters is one by Gacta, which Rumura has his own hard-on for. So unless he actually gives the okay to go, it's no go. This is probably the same reason why we never got a remaster or an HD version of Dirge Cerberus, because he actually shows up in the post-credit scene.
Hey, that was
Why not just remove him from the post? Why not just remove the post-credit scene? Then?
Because I think Nomura has too much of a hard-on.
And given how the remake goes, they may or may not be tying details to that. But honestly, my fear is like, well, if we're going to eventually get a remaster or remake of that, by then probably Square will reveal, hey, dealt with those.
Maybe that's exactly what you said, Joe.
Very well done. You certainly know to handle beavers, you naughty boy.
Please do not. Oh, God.
Jova, you never told this to us. Come on.
Maybe.
Hey, the people in my pocket are just as much responsible for this as I am.
Alright, I played Whisperwind.
Also, in your pocket, though.
Also, Jova watched a lot of Nickelodeon growing up. So he's familiar with beavers.
I actually watched like 1 or 2 episodes of Angry Beavers, and I was very confused about it. I
haven't even heard of it till you guys literally just said it.
I was more of a Cartoon Network guy back when I was a kid.
I was more of a Disney cartoon guy.
Sure.
I'm a Disney Cartoon Network Nickelodeonology.
Alright, for this particular... Sorry, let me explain quickly. For this particular floor, you're like in the remnants of a castle, and all the guards have been zombified, and you basically need to fight them, and then eventually reach the king, I think. Go on.
I was somebody who watched Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, Fox Kids, 4Kids, a bit of the Hasbro Hub Network here and there, and
Joe, the Hasbro Hub Network came out when we were teenagers.
Yes,
so you can't be a kid.
Well, technically, people call teenagers kids, so it counts.
Also, like I mentioned in the past, I really didn't have a choice because aside from pay TV, we really had just the container quote-unquote program. We picked a bit from everything, so we might get like a Nickelodeon cartoon and a Fox Kids one, for example. It was
And I
really
grew
weird.
up with primarily Disney, Cartoon Network, and Fox Kids, who I think became Jetix around here, I guess.
Fox
Yeah,
Kids
basically,
became
Shiro,
Jetix, I know that.
It was Fox Kids in the 90s, then in 2005 it became Jetix, then in 2009 it became Disney XD, and then later on in September, Disney XD along with the other 2 Disney channels around here are going to be defunct.
I remember
Disney defunct.
I remember the transition to Jetix because one of the very first things they did was actually to advertise Sonic X with a very obnoxious pop song. My soul is bound, and they had to fight her. There you go. These are unique enemies, Pallet Swamps of Astos. Don't worry,
also,
these
Deji,
are
if you're wondering why my name is in capitals, it's because apparently I'm the loudest person.
I will love you always.
Maybe
But Pedro and Jovo are right here.
Maybe it's maybe your name was localized by Working Designs, dudes.
None shall stand in my way.
By who? Sorry, Pedro.
Working Designs. For those who don't know who Working Designs was, they were basically, you know how nowadays we have companies like NIS America and Xseed Games that specialize in localizing Japanese games. I'm sorry, what?
884, they're a localization company too.
Oh yeah, sure. Anyway, the point is we have plenty. Hold on, fine.
What manner of treachery is this? My army is defeated. No.
Okay,
Alright,
guys,
we were guarding a fairy tonic and an emergency exit. Those are nice items, but at this point of the game, you really don't need them, so oops, I guess.
Oh no, it's Leonardo DiCaprio!
Please let me win an Oscar. Please let me win an Oscar. Please let me win an Oscar.
Sorry, Deji, that joke doesn't work anymore.
This was before that happened.
Yeah, we actually did as a channel transition through the phases. I remember Dweebs actually did record at some point a Flash game where Leonardo DiCaprio was supposed to catch
I
an
recorded
Oscar.
the Flash game where Leonardo DiCaprio has to chase after an
We
Oscar.
lost the audio for that one, and by the time we might have wanted to redo it, the moment had passed. So alas.
Come to think of it, wasn't it the Revenant that
Don't worry,
finally
I'm
got
sure there'll
him?
be a Bryan
Hold on,
Cranston
Wiz.
Oscar chasing game soon.
Wiz, let me finish. Wasn't it the Revenant that got him the Oscar?
Yes.
Huh,
Yeah, Revenant. Yeah.
Anyway, as I was saying, don't worry, guys. I'm sure in the future there'll be a Bryan Cranston wants an Oscar chase game or
Something.
Alright, so
Yes, Dej?
Pedro's supposed to be the black mage, right?
Yes.
Shiro is supposed to be the white mage.
Get
Exactly.
it? Because the sprite of a white mage is the one that looks the most like a girl. So
That's the thing, Tail.
Anywhere.
That's the
I
thing.
know. You should help me look. If you find him for me, I'll tell you something real important. Great. Guess you need to know what it looks like, huh? Let's see. He's a kid with a black hair. Come let me know once you find him. That's not generic at all, kid. Jesus Christ.
This is basically, Deji, this is one really nightmarish world. Every single character sounds exactly the same as the other.
By the way, each door teleports you to another place of the village, so basically this hide and seek game is a complete nightmare.
This reminds me of that.
Everyone sounds exactly the same. They can only walk about only to certain places. They can't even go back inside their own homes if they leave them.
Oh, there
he is.
Found you. Good. Here, you little...
Stand still.
You're 8. Shucks, you found me. You found me.
This
Your
is
name was Jova.
This is just like the Bombers mini game in Majora's Mask.
Jova, you're Pennywise.
Nah.
Really? Was I in there? Thanks.
Yes.
Oh, there's a stairway over there in the corner. You can use it if you want to.
Why is there a stairway in the corner?
Why
Welcome
not?
to his
There
creepy
is.
basement.
Honestly, okay, Tio, I have to ask. These things,
And it leads into a cove.
Well, it leads to the next floor. Remember, the trick about this is that the floors each leads to, they can be anything that they want. Define space and time in terms of logic. Anyway, give me a second, because this is the first of the bosses that you will find in this particular dungeon. You find one of them for every 10 floor. So let's try to first find it, because this is a big one. Okay, here we go. Funko!
Did Ted Woolsey translate this?
Yes, because it's Typhon. Well, in the original SNES version is called Chupon, because, I get it that the Ted Woolsey's translation gave a lot more flavor to all of the characters like Kefka, but in doing so, it changed a lot of names, and I argue not always for the best. And later releases actually had to encounter a sort of a nightmare in trying to have a cohesive name theming. It's kind of like how for Yu-Gi-Oh! The TCG sometimes translates names from the OCG in a completely nonsensical way, just to be cute, like with Frog the Gem. But that's a topic for Final Fantasy VI itself.
That and censorship reasons as well.
The point is that this monstrosity with 2 heads allows to snort at you, and every snort counts as a one-hit kill if it hits you, so be careful. Go on, Jova.
With these extra super special dungeons we've been going into, do they go across alternate dimensions or something? Seriously, some of these have been going into borderline nightmare feel of how you have this weird out of nowhere looking world within the dungeon, to the point where you traverse a world within said dungeon. People are like, oh, everything's just fine, but it feels like a flipping ghost town when you get down to it.
There's no in-game explanation, but it's just there for the sake of, giving it a dungeon with peculiar floors, Like I mentioned in the past, Final Fantasy 2 actually has a better, a more refined version of this kind of dungeon, with actually story explanations on why the floors are constructed the way they are, and how they are connected. Again, tied to the world system that's unique to that game, but all in due time.
Isn't Final Fantasy 2 the very depressing one, I hear?
Well, actually, no, Final Fantasy 2 is just A New Hope, really.
Well, not just on your hope. Honestly, I argue it abridges the entirety of the original trilogy of Star Wars.
Yeah.
It encompasses, it has stuff like the destruction of the big enemy vehicle, the Black Knight that turns out to be a person that the protagonist knows, the Emperor. Honestly, Joe, I argue there's also a bit of insight, because the Emperor, the antagonist of Final Fantasy 2, kinda undergoes a sort of a resurrection that's a bit similar to what Episode 9 introduced, but again, I don't want to transform this into another talk about Star Wars. We'll just leave it for the actual Final Fantasy 2 commentary. Go on, Jova, sorry.
But yeah, it's interesting how these dungeons work, cool. It's almost like, it's maybe the afterlife. Like, you go from a kingdom ruled by dead people who I guess are trying to live past their prime, to suddenly a land full of nothing but children. Like, you have to wonder what the hell is going on here.
Also, see guys, Pedro P4 showed how you dodge as North.
Yeah.
You and Bleeps should learn more about
Well,
this,
basically, Deji, to catch you up to speed, for a lot of times in this playthrough, I've been basically carrying this party on my back. A lot of times I've been the one that basically...
Well, in terms of damage, Shira has been the actual one that had to save everyone from death.
Babysitting dwarves for the most part.
And in terms of tanking damage...
Occasionally the rest of you.
And in terms of tanking damage, I've been the one who's been carrying this party. Hell, I've literally been carrying this party.
You know...
Wait, would that be Dwibs though, actually?
No, actually, yeah.
Both of them equally argue. Dwibs just happens to have less defense and as such dies more often. But yeah, in terms of receiving damage, both of them actually got...
In fact, Teo, now that I think about it, the dynamic here seems very similar to Black Mage and Fighter from 8-Bit Theater, where the Black Mage is basically doing all the big super duper magic, and Fighter is and Black Mage is constantly throwing the Fighter into as a human shield. So the dynamic here are unintentional. So the dynamic here is actually very similar. But just to continue my earlier thing, now back in the day, back in the early 90s, localizations of Japanese games were, let's just say, uncommon, just to put it nicely.
A hit or miss.
And hit or miss, yeah. And even when there was a localization, it could be a bad localization. Yeah, true.
The miracle never happened.
Yeah,
Well, that's just a typo. Well, to connect to one thing that I mentioned before, Ted Woolsey did not translate to just 506, but also helped, I think, with Chrono Trigger.
Yes.
But also Secret of Mana, basically this Yes and Yes Square trilogy. The problem is that the translation of Secret of Mana got hit the most by his antics, to the point where modern ROMs for emulator actually have patches that actually restore a lot of dialogues that were cut away as a result.
It's the one that's on Switch. Does that have the fixed translation?
I actually haven't checked, so I don't know.
but
Go on,
anyway.
Pedro.
However, there was one company at the time who was, which the president was actually very passionate about Japanese games, who actually decided to take the initiative. So they were the first major company, the gaming company that specifically specialized in localizing Japanese games that other companies were not that their own companies were not willing to localize because they didn't have faith that it would be successful outside of Japan. You might their most successful release and the one that the most known for you guys it was Lunar Silver Star for the Sega CD, which is regarded to say as one of the best. No, Game Arts was the developer of the original game too. Working Designs did the localization.
Sorry.
Working Designs.
I thought they themselves have handled that, but sorry, go on.
No, Game Arts is the developer. Working Designs did the localization, which is the one I'm talking
All
about.
right, we killed him.
It's weird because instead for Game Arts' other major IP, Grandia, the publisher for the first two games was Ubisoft.
Well, that's because Ubisoft actually did step in, but Ubisoft wasn't around in 1992, at least not to localize stuff.
Okay, then.
So,
Anyway, we got one piece of a Genji equipment, so on to Jova it goes. You're starting to look more like a samurai. Congratulations, Jova.
Now he just needs to change his name to Jack.
but yeah,
Anyway, go on.
But yeah, no, Lunar Silver Star is regarded by the JRPG community as one of the best JRPGs ever made, and that was it was actually a surprise hit. And they also localized the PS1 remake later on, and they're the ones who brought on a lot of other, even some action RPGs, tactical RPGs. They brought on a lot of Japanese games back in their day, so they were kind of the pioneers of that practice. Now they're the reason why we now have companies like NIS American XSeed.
What was the game called again? Lunar Superstar.
Lunar Silver Star. The best version is the PSP remake.
Silver Star. Sorry, I put in Lunar Superstar.
The
and I got a bunch of bikes.
There's three versions: the original one, the PS1 remake, and the PSP remake. The best version is the PSP remake because it has a better translation. This is what I was about to get into when referred to the Ted Woolsey translation that we were talking about. This is where let's just say their localization. Well, they were very passionate about what they were making, to give them credit, and they did do that job of bringing in a lot of Japanese games that wouldn't have made it outside of Japan otherwise. So everybody gives them credit there. The problem is the actual localizations themselves, on the other hand, they could be dodgy at times because they would throw in pop culture references that were not in the original script. So
that, I guess, NIS America actually got from them that trait.
Well, there you go then, too.
They also love to do that.
Well, there you go then, too. The problem is, too, a lot of times it was at the service in a lot of ways about what the original developers intended. Like, for example, to give you an idea, too, in their US manual of the Lunar Silver Star for the Sega CD, they talk about how, when we try to localize a game, we try our best to make sure the Western audience gets the same experience the Japanese audience gets. However, right after that, in the next paragraph, they talk about how they completely replaced the opening song of Lunar, which was a typical Japanese ballad, to something a bit more exciting and action-packed of a song. So, gotta love the immediate contradiction there. Like, let's just say they were well-intentioned, but their methods were questionable at times.
Tio, I have a question for you. Are you doing some backtracking right now?
No. I'm actually going through each floor. The problem is that a lot of floors actually have the same theming. You know, like an ice cave, for example. Like I said, if a floor doesn't provide anything particular, I'm just filling it up. The problem
I actually have sorry.
The problem is this is the biggest of the bunch because it has 40 floors.
The interesting thing is that when Xseed localized the PSP remake of Lunar, they actually did use the working designs. Actually, this is important too.
Basically, for this dungeon, I had to get 2 parts from malfunctioning golems, there you go, and give it to the other guy. I just thought it would have been cute just to leave it here, but go on.
The interesting thing is that, again, Xseed was actually, the guys like Xseed actually did a good job in respecting what, because for better or worse, that's the working design script was the one fans grew up with, and they were very attached to it. So Xseed did try their best to use the working designs translation as the base, while still fixing some stuff where, you know, they removed the pop culture references, but still kept some of the jokes of the non-pop culture jokes that the working designs left. So so the PSP remake is your best bet for playing that game. It's the one that basically keeps keeps the good stuff but takes out the bad stuff. Like
it's on iOS, isn't it?
It's an iOS, but the iOS port is crap. Don't bother. Just play the PSP remake.
iOS ports tend to be crap.
Hell, that's the thing. The PSP port. Sorry, the iOS port is not even a port of the PSP version. It's a mashup of different versions of the game. It's weird.
A pastiche.
But anyway, Jova, you had a question for me?
Yeah. So, you know, you mentioned a lot of these localizations, but would you say that there were a good percentage of them that were, per se, localizations that helped improve the plot and writing? You know, kind of like Final Fantasy VI's localization?
Well...
Hold on, Rex Boss. Because this actually is one of the more recurring ones. We already seen this guy in 13.2, so... That's actually one of the one of the other recurring ones other than Gilgamesh.
Wait, is this why you guys don't like 13.2 then?
What have we here? I'm warning you, I'm armed. 8 armed these.
Gee, I wonder who this is.
Well, that's one of the problems that I mentioned before. This
Arthros?
This looks like a Dragon Quest.
His name is Ultros, you fucking hacks.
That's the problem. The original name was Arthros, which is based on a mythological creature, but I have no idea for which specific reason. Ted Woolsey for 6 called it just Ultros. I guess the thought process behind was it's easier to pronounce, maybe. So the problem is that for each subsequent appearance, the guy never had a very consistent name. The more common one is Ultros, but there are occasions like this one where he's just called Arthros. Anyway, he's basically, as you can see, basically an octopus. He loves to use multiple attacks and occasionally ink to blind the target. So it's a relatively easy one. It just has also a lot of defense.
I'm gonna have to side with Ted on this one. I think Ultros rolls off the tongue better because this name is just hard to even say.
Go on. I'm gonna check in the meantime on the wiki.
To answer Jova's question, well, from working designs themselves, not really. I mean, most of don't get me wrong, the localizations were not terrible, they were serviceable. It's just that they had issues that fortunately the fans along the years did a good job in. Their major problem with their localizations, Jova, is that they actually made the gameplay worse. To give you an idea, Jova, the save system of Lunar Silver Star has always been just like a save state. It's not like your typical Golden Age RPG where you can only save in towns or in the world map. No. In all 3 Lunar Silver Star versions, you can just go to the menu and save whatever you are, as long as it's not in a battle, of course. But what they did in the Sega CD original, Jova, is that you have to pay. As in-game money, not, because it's Sega CD time. Not microtransactions, don't worry. You have to pay to save the game. Why? You might be wondering why. That's because it's the same reason why Battletoads on the West was way harder than in Japan. Because at the time, the rental market of video games was basically, doing wonders. And a lot of developers did this in the West to make sure the game could not be beaten under a weekend, and to force people to buy the game, basically.
So I have a question about that specifically.
Let me just mention this one. The reason I'm bringing this up is because well, I'm not saying Ted Woolsey is perfect, but Ted Woolsey, I would argue, did a better job than Working Designs at still putting his own spin on things, but at the same time staying mostly faithful to those. At least he didn't throw in pop cultural references in places that were not appropriate. At least.
Cafefe, like that one Snack Kingdom game.
Oh, he was involved with that?
I don't think I'm aware of what game you're talking about.
The level 5 Snack World.
Snack World?
Oh, Snack
Yeah.
World. What's
Yeah, because they did put a Cafefe joke and everyone got annoyed with it.
Wait, seriously, we did that?
Wait,
Yes.
they did what?
so Crunchyroll put that in when they localized the anime?
So it's Crunchyroll who was responsible. That's not surprising.
Oh,
then.
do they-
What did they put in
Wait,
there?
I don't know. There was a level 5
I'll
game.
type it in, Jova. Sorry, just Shiroi.
Hold on.
Because
Wait.
I don't even know what that means. Covfefe, what does that mean?
It's
Oh, that.
I'll tell you
it
after
was
we're done with this
so
part,
thing.
Pedro.
it was something the U.S. president tweeted out by mistake,
Oh,
and everyone made fun of him for it.
Yeah, that.
So it's like you posted that like 2 years after everyone stopped caring.
Was that the anime or the game?
Huh?
Because did this take place in the anime or in the game? That's what I'm wondering.
The game.
Okay, I don't know this specific one. I'll have to look it up. But anyway,
I'll post it.
sure. No, the reason I bring it up is because again, Ted Woolsey still, at the very least, I would argue, still a much better professional job of localizing these things, despite still putting in his own liberties on the source material. Because Working Designs could be very dodgy.
Mm-hmm.
By
There
all,
goes the octopus.
yes.
We'll see what happens in our
Adwebs, apparently you changed your name to Darkness for a while there.
Basically, he was blinded.
I know.
All right.
Actually, I haven't seemed to have found any particular reason why the name was changed, but like I said, I get the feeling it was just for better spelling, potentially for American audiences. But no, what Pedro said is mostly correct. The idea that at least Ted's heart was in the right place. Anyway, let me mention this quickly. This floor is chock full of fairies. Here's the problems: some fairies are helpful, others are not. The tricky ones will love to drain you from your HP and MP, so you better actually find the correct fairies before reaching the teleport or the stairs towards the next floor, because otherwise you will be in severe disadvantage as a result. And some fairies actually do block.
There you go. I posted it.
Do block your path.
Okay.
But the cool Easter egg is that you find here also the fairy that you freed from the Oxyale bottle, so that's also cool.
All right.
But
Fairies are good, and which.
but like I was saying, again, Ted's heart at least was in the right place, so even if he potentially screwed something up, like say with the aforementioned Secret of Mana, at least it was from good faith.
Sure.
Then you have these weird things like with Treehouse for Nintendo that I have no idea what was the thought process behind Fire Emblem Fates. I guess they were just confident in how we managed to turn Kiriko's Uprising script, and they were like, sure, let's do this for Fire Emblem, it will work just the same, but it didn't. But
there are some things that are fun, like when Professor Kukui said, "My body is ready." It's like, yeah, that makes sense in the
that makes
concept.
sense. The problem that is there are other things like the interaction between the two ninjas. I forgot their names, which actually had dialogue in the original Japanese translation. An important one talking about how it's tough their job, and they actually instead change it into basically a staring contest where no one speaks for no reason. Like, that's literally cutting away dialogue.
What game was that?
Fire Emblem Fates.
Well, people don't like Fates to begin with, so...
I agree with that, but that in itself would not be an excuse to not give a shit.
I know. Like, if it's something like Ace Attorney where the localization is sincere, Like
Sure.
it doesn't take away from the plot.
Okay.
But
And again, to give an example of the same translator, I still argue the translation that they gave the localization they did for Kid Icarus Uprising was actually more on par with what Ted Woolsey did for 6. Again, the process with which Hades became a better character for the West is parallel to the one that Kefka did. So there's that.
I will say this, my stance is like, well, I understand definitely that first and foremost, the idea should be to maintain the original intent while conveying it as best as you can to people of different nations. That said, if a localization can make a story actually better, I'm not gonna be against that per se. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, true, Joe. The problem is better is subjective. You know, what is better for you may not necessarily be better for other people. That's the thing. It's a very tenuous.
context.
It's a very fine line you're writing when you do that. That's the problem.
There's also of course, the cultural barrier and values dissonance thing to take into account, because some games may treat a particular themes in ways that other countries may not agree or like that, and will have to be changed as a result.
Yeah.
Although I still understand what was the thought process of Atlas of America for the localization of the first Persona on PS1, because they not only they changed a lot of the script, but actually a couple of the characters too.
I do understand that better is subjective, but there are some clear-cut cases where it definitely is better. Case in point, Kefka and the localization of Final Fantasy.
No, that I do agree. Yeah,
it is like legit better here and there. Like, okay, now you could argue, oh, they didn't keep it true to the original, but that's the thing. The original was as flat a plank of wood as you can get character-wise compared to.
And then someone posts in the someone posts in the comments of this video, "Hey, I'm a fan of the original Japanese version."
And good for you, but you know, there's kind of a reason that even Square themselves went, you know what? Yeah, they kind of did Kefka better than we did. Let's just go with that for his.
It's a situation a bit similar to the makers of the Ghost Stories anime. It didn't work really in Japan with it straightforward, so we were like, for the West, do what you want. But more on that later, because we reached the third boss. For this situation, we have a village full of people that have been turned to stone or zombies. Please wait.
Seriously.
Complete with the sad music.
I'll continue after this.
Someone please help. Why is this happening? We have done nothing wrong.
I don't even know who you people are. You're in some random dungeon here.
Jova, you're not Thanos. The agony. ...
Oh, he has nothing to say.
It's turned to stone, Jova. Help us, please help us.
Who are
Yeah,
you?
let's move on. Yes, Wibs?
Well, actually, I was.
No,
But go
I was
ahead.
just asking who they were.
No, these are basically generic NPCs. Like, again, we found ourselves in a city that is being turned... There we go. Help us, that monstrosity behind the breeze transforms us into the grotesque forms you see now.
Oh, okay.
To can defeat it, we should revert to our former selves. Please,
sounds nice.
heed our plea. This is a bit puzzling because the creature responsible for this, in terms of, behavior, doesn't really fit to what has actually happened to the village, but more on them we actually start fighting it.
Well, I guess the idea is was that these cities are just war points or something,
Oh.
because...
I will usher you into the next world. Okay, this is one of our favorites, the Phantom Train. And this is exactly the problem that they have. The Phantom Train is just supposed to be a vehicle that carries the dead to the afterlife, nothing more. And you're telling me that these things turn all the people of the village into stone and zombies just because? The only connection that I give is this is a reference to Final Fantasy VIII, where the Guardian Force Charon actually is a train that can inflict all the possible debuffs onto the enemy. So that's the stretch that I can get to this, but not much else.
Guys, this is the
Good
asshole
old
that's
Phantom
turning
Train.
into zombies in stone. Let's beat him up,
Quick, Dibs, you're the monk. Raise it up and
yeah.
body slam it.
or hell, suplex it.
Unfortunately,
I'm glad
Dweebs doesn't know how to pile drive things.
Aw.
Well, I mean, at least it's... Well, I'm glad it's not an infinity train. I'll never be able to beat it.
But no, it's like I think a good example is how Ollie-chan, one of the translators of Ni no Kuni, did a great job in saying that a localization should be invisible, as in true to the spirit, but not necessarily the specifics. Like, and a good example of this is, of course, the translation between the Japanese fairies and the Welsh fairies in the localized versions, where in the original version, as written by Hino, it was Drippy had the Osaka accent. For those who don't know, the Osaka accent is an accent that's kind of used a lot for comedy by Japanese comedians. It's considered to be their funny accent of sorts.
It's the equivalent of the country bumpkin, so basically like a southern accent for America.
Something like that, yeah. So basically, when they were translating so the idea with Drippy is that he's Shizuku, as he's called in the Japanese script, is that he's supposed to be a funny psychic with a funny accent. So what English accent can we use that would be a good equivalent? And according to the localization case study that another localizing member made for the game, they said that they were thinking about Southern accents, they were thinking about Scottish accents at one point. Eventually, they came up with the idea of using their own accent, the Welsh accents. Why? According to them, very few prominent characters that are Welsh in video games, so it felt fresh to them. That's what they said. These are not my words. These are their words. So
and then we got Nia and Xenoblade Chronicles too.
True. That maybe that's what kickstarted it. Who knows? Because Ni no Kuni 1 came out all the way back in 2013. It might have been an influence. Who knows?
We're slowly invading this industry.
Exactly.
I'm just saying, Nia is literally just Shiro.
We know that. We know. Don't worry.
But I didn't know.
Sure.
Let me just put this, Shuri. You are in Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
Yes, I know, as a cat also, that doesn't help.
It's literally...
well, tiger, but the same tree.
Yeah,
same.
That's still a cat.
A feline still.
Yeah, let's just go with the generic term.
Yeah, it's literally you, right down to the behavior and everything.
I think it's one of those cases where the idea for localizing is making sure you remove something that's like try to make. I think Ollie Chance, again, the guy that talked about the localization should be invisible thing. He said it best that the best localization is the one that makes you feel like the localized script, feels like it was always English to begin with. You know, in the sense that you wouldn't even notice that this is what you're seeing a translated script, that you're reading a translated script. Sorry, as in, but still, of course, he has to keep all the whole way that the localized Drippy is a fantastic job, and it keeps the spirit of the original creator, but doing it in a way that makes sense for the English audience. You know, that's how you should do it. You should be true to the spirit, but not necessarily the specifics, because you can make changes. It's not that you can't make changes, it's just that when you make a change, it has to be a change that makes sense, that has some kind of logic to it. The problem is that...
Why the hell are we fighting a train?
It's a reference to Final Fantasy VI.
The Phantom Train has been one of the more memorable bosses of Final Fantasy VI, and as a result, it has become, from some source unseen, the scent of flowers is carried you on to. So basically, now you're going to get a bit of a payoff of this mini story arc. But basically, long story short, it has become a bit iconic. So when Final Fantasy VI cameos have to show up, he's included in the package usually.
Basically, Deji, in Final Fantasy VI, there's a little moment where one of the characters literally pile drives a train.
Yes.
And it's awesome.
While the train is running, by the way.
To be fair, it is a ghost train.
True. But still awesome.
Even in general, for the story itself, the entirety of the Phantom Train sequence is a bit of a big-leaved alligator moment. Anyway, there you go. The village now is being restored to how it was. Please rest here for a while before moving on. You see everyone is happy. I don't actually know if this is just straightforward, like you just save everyone, or this is like a metaphor where everyone can actually move on to the afterlife. But who cares? I actually kind of like this. They actually took time to be, to be a bit cute for that. But go on, Jova or Pedro, whoever was talking.
That was me, but don't worry, I'm almost done. For me, I'm gonna have to agree with Richard Mark Honeywood and his team. I think their method is the best method, like in the sense that you can still have your things, like for example the whole like for example, one of the cool things that I like is that in the original script of Layton's Mystery Journey, there's supposed to be just a Saint Goodwin's Day, which is some kind of weird fictional holiday that Hino came up with, which has nothing to do with British holidays. But Richard and his team changed it to the bank holiday, which Shiroi told me is actually a thing. So basically,
What?
well, basically Shiroi.
I'm commenting on the ghosts in the game.
Oh, okay.
Basically, for this floor, you have your, like the old man said, you're walking among the souls and you need to talk to them to quell the spirit. Some of them will just go away, others will try to attack you as a result. So it just depends. And you will have a bit of a familiar faces here, but it's actually kind of bit nice because bears are supposed to be like the enemies that you face, but actually talk to you and they have a bit of personality.
Wasn't this a game that SCWRM released like earlier this year or late last year that had the same premise?
Sorry, can you repeat that? In what kind of way? Sorry, Dej.
That you're actually like helping souls go to the afterlife. It was made by the same team dev that made I Am Setsuna.
Lost Sphere, that's
yeah.
2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, Lost Sphere was well, actually no. He's talking about Oninaki. Oninaki is the one that ends with the souls. Yeah.
Lost Sphere is also similar. It has like the theme of memory disappearing as a result. The world is deteriorating.
Oh, by the actually no. Jova was after me. Go ahead, Jova. Do your argument, and I'll do my next. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I noticed how so far with the bosses in this part, I've managed to get the killing blow with the sword.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then. To give you an idea, Shiroi, of how cheeky working designs could get with their localizations. Basically, there's in the original. Basically, there's a point where there are 3 main characters in Lunar. 2 of them are boys, and the other one is a girl. And one of the basically in the original Japanese script, there's a point where they're about to set off on a journey, but one of the boys tells the other, "Look, you should not tell Luna that we're going on an adventure because you know she never lets you go because she's worried about you." So just don't tell her, please. It's just but for the better, and that's basically it. It's as straightforward as you're thinking right now. Working Designs thought this was a good opportunity to make a little joke, if you can call it that, where here's how it goes in the English script. Look, Alex, you can't tell Luna that we're going. You know she never lets you do anything. And then he says, and I'm not kidding when I say this, girls are supposed to prevent boys from having fun. I'm not kidding, that's the actual line. Exactly as I just said it. Girls are supposed to prevent boys from having fun. So yeah, Shira, could you please explain to me why exactly do you keep preventing us from having fun? It's just, come on.
The line is stupid for a start.
I know, right?
Also, you have to remember, Pedro, she's a cat, not a human being.
Did you actually hear that?
Did you hear what? Sorry. I'm sorry.
Shiroi?
You hear that?
I think Shiroi might be cutting away.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, the cool, like I said, the only souls that attack you in this floor are the one of Astos we see before and the vampire. Problem, they have the same stats as you fought them first, so they're basically one hit destroys them. So there's just one. So basically, we've just channeled Saitama. Basically for this one.
Oh, is that like a One Punch Man?
Yeah. One punch!
I was trying to say, Discord, that line is stupid anyway in how it's written, and...
Yeah. Oh, I agree. No.
It's stupid in terms of writing and what it means.
Okay, I can kind of understand what they were going with. They were going with that very old media stereotype of the boys are always the one to go on adventures and shit, and the girls are the ones who are always saying, "Why? That's dangerous. That's dangerous."
Times, and I've heard it done better. Is the point?
No.
Even if it's like...
I know. But to me, it's one of those cases where I just find it absolutely hilariously dumb, in the sense that I always love to turn, like, for example, I did it to Vanessa as well, yeah. Why do you... Yeah, bitch, why do you keep preventing me from having fun? Don't worry, Vanessa doesn't mind when I say this to her. Why do you keep preventing me from having fun? Like, seriously, stop it. You should... That's really inconsiderate to me.
for this floor.
So wait, like Webby from DuckTales?
Speaking of accents, this floor brings back the Scottish dwarves. Each of them has a problem. I heard Eric, a broad dwarf, holding eyes regarded as hooky the canal. Now want to hook a canal too, but I got nothing to hook with. Heard they suppose I could find some toes around here. Basically, it's get an item from a person, give it to another, and chain of deal until you manage to find a way to reach the teleport. We dwarves are canny with their hands. We can. Jesus Christ, this accent. But seeing I broke my toes, I cannot craft the thing.
Ah, good old Scottish. Heard enough of that in Brave.
I appreciate the sentiment, but I wish I could be fucking reading that.
Maybe we should get Kelly MacDonald to help us out with that.
I want to reconstruct a ship built long ago by Luthanian called Sid. A ship that could sail the skies. I just didn't have the parts I need. Think he could help by me then?
Sure. I'll find them.
The point is that you need to get the items. Jesus Christ! You obtain the Karobo. Basically, I'm cutting away all the in between bits where otherwise I will be just be getting up and down constantly, So I will just give them to the owners on their own. There we go. Anyway, so actually I have a question, Pedro.
Yes.
Is the company still around?
No, they went to... See, the thing is, to their credit, they spent a lot of money in getting in, doing what are quality dubs, not necessarily quality translations, like I've just said, but quality dubs that had people who knew how to voice act.
They spared no expense.
So no. To their credit, they were genuinely passionate about what they were making. It's just that their skills and methods were questionable. That's the basic gist of it.
One step closer to my dream. Sorry, go on. Sorry.
The primary problem there is that they kept releasing these awesome, super duper cool collector's editions before collector's editions were popular. So the fact that they were always trying their hardest to make quality localizations and quality releases of their products meant this a lot of money. And as games started getting more expensive, combined with the fact that Atlas around the PS2 era started looking into localizing their own games, so also NIS America started becoming a thing by that point in the PS2 era as well. Basically, till what them being the only one doing this thing was no longer the case. So it got to a point where they weren't as sought out as before, and they had to eventually stop doing it because the costs were rising and the sales were not rising as well. So
not only that, but I'm guessing that by now, a lot of those games that they localized can be got on pretty much other platforms and may have been re-localized or redone with the localization. So
yeah,
I guess in a way they were kind of cast aside by history, sadly.
Still, they deserve their place in history, specifically Japanese game history, for being pioneers of basically being the first ones to take the initiative of, localizing these Japanese games that nobody else was willing to.
It actually reminds me a bit in terms of a whole collector's edition to what THQ Nordic is doing these days for their releases, because I think what I noticed is that they always have these for their announcements, these gigantic collector's edition that are goes also to the $100 each, and I keep asking do they actually sell? Because they seem to propose them with each new title, and yet they don't stop doing that, so they have to sell in some kind of capacity. I don't know. It's
the thing. If you want more details, Theo, you can go to YouTube and search Working Designs retrospective, because back in the day, for those who don't remember, there was once a channel called Retroware TV, and they actually did made a 4-part retrospective on Working Designs, their background, where they came from, and how everything was done. They have a fantastic 4-part retrospective that basically will tell you everything you need to know too.
Okay.
They even talk about all the games that they localize and what they change. A lot, for example, right, to give you an idea, there's right now a fan hacker who has a project going on called the Unworked Designs Project, where he takes these games localized by working designs and he reverses the gameplay changes. For example, he did Unworked Designs of Lunar Superstar where you no longer have to pay to save your game. Thank God. So, unfortunately, he even says in the page, unfortunately, I am a hacker, not a translator, which means I cannot do anything about the terrible translations. He's not a fan of working designs. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Pedro, regarding working designs. Oh, hey, Freya. Regarding working designs, are there any localizations of theirs that survived to this day and age? And by that, I mean any of their localizations that were deemed good enough to still be considered the localizations of now, or have they all pretty much just been replaced by supposedly better localizations?
Okay, I guess their best localizations. You talk about in terms of translation, I'm guessing. Because remember, they're local. Because I have to specify because
when it comes to the mechanics, they're okay. Don't get me wrong. I agree that mechanically, them making stuff more bulks. Admittedly, that was sadly having to do with, I guess, the standards of the Western video game market. Which,
the rental market specifically, yeah.
Yeah, here and there. So, yeah, kudos there. But, I'm talking mainly about, translation. What you would expect when people talk about localization. Changing up graphics to match certain countries, or changing up the script and localization. And what?
Okay. In terms of their... Okay, to answer your first question, I guess their lunar translations are probably their best ones. So you can still go back and play even the original Lunar games. Just get the Unworked Designs versions, so that you can remove the bullshit gameplay extra difficulty. To give you an idea, too, they raised the stats of all the monsters in the game, just to make it harder.
So they thought the game was too easy?
Apparently, yeah.
I remember a couple, not everyone, but a couple of developers tend to do that for Western releases, like we really change the difficulty too easy or too hard as a result.
Okay, here's the thing, Theo. Back in the day, the idea was for the Western market to make stuff tougher so that people wouldn't be able to beat them within a week, so that then they wouldn't be able to just simply rent them, but would have to buy them. Because, renting was sort of the in thing to do. You could get a game, rent it, complete it, return it again, so you wouldn't have to, pay as much for a game.
Basically, yeah, that was the idea. That's the thing, too.
Hold on, last boss of the bunch, and this is the one that, yes, it's another iconic, but we didn't bother to actually give him a proper dialogue. Death Gaze. This is a sky pirate, technically. It's a flying monster that haunts airships. Again, debuted in Final Fantasy VI, and it has become iconic for this kind of role, for this very purpose. While in 7, his role was mostly given to Ultimate Weapon. It does shows up more starting with 9, for example. Then he has these cameos like here or in the After Years, Then it will. I think it also shows up in 12. So basically, he has become this iconic creature that hunts airships, and he's very tough to defeat. It's like optional boss, but like of the medium late game variety. It doesn't have anything particular in his arsenal. It just hits really hard and has a couple of spells. But it was one primary target in the original SNES version for the one particular glitch. If you use two spells in conjunction, I forgot specifically which one, like Null Zone and Doom, I think, you could basically render a boss not immune to a particular death spell, and use that afterward to completely erase it, and it worked for everyone, everything. Unfortunately, they fixed that for the Game Boy Advance version, so no more fun allowed with experimentation.
Alas.
Yeah. To answer Jova's other question, if I remember correctly, was about translating and even changing graphics, and where I stand about that. It was something like that, right?
My question was mainly, were there any localizations of, shoot, I forgot their name already.
Working designs.
Yeah. Were there any localizations of working designs that, gameplay aside, which I assume would have gotten tooled in, like, you know, say a re-release or something, were there any of them that, you know, per se stood the test of time to the point where they're still being used to this day, or...
Yeah.
Don't worry, Waves.
Like I said, the lunar translations. Those are their best ones, probably.
No. What I'm asking is, like, well, were there any that were apparently good enough for them to have been kept? Like,
for being kept,
much all replaced by, you know, supposedly better localizations.
Like, see, that's the thing. Like that answer depends on your personal.
No. Oh, my question is: are there any other localizations that survived to present day?
Oh, survived.
Or were they all just, you know, replaced?
As in, they're still being the ones used. Well, the iOS port of Lunar used the Working Designs translation. That's it. They didn't even use the PSP updated translation from Xseed. So
I guess
that one,
like you yourself said, in that regard, that port's a mess.
It is a mess, yeah. So yeah, I guess the Lunar Silver Star ones, yes, definitely.
It is kind of a shame for a working design. Like, I mean, to have been the pioneer, but unfortunately not to have been the perfect one. It would be a shame if they sort of get, you know, just forgotten because, well, their localizations aren't the ones being recovered. And, you know, from what you've told me, it kind of does make sense that, you know, their localizations would be replaced with better localizations. You know, it's just, you know, admittedly, it's sort of a point where, you know, wrong place, wrong time.
And your reward for this is the ultimate weapon. Sorry, Joe. Again, this is the best sword in the game, and just like in 7, it's tied to, in this case, Jova's total HPs, meaning that the better you are in battle, the more efficient you will be. And
for a second there, I thought...
And that's the one that I used for the previous dungeon.
Basically,
anyway,
for a second there, I thought it meant every time you use it, you lose a bit of health.
Anyway, that's basically it for the optional dungeons. Like I said, I'm not showing the labyrinth of time due to me having to take a lot of time to actually arrive at a decent condition. So in the next part, our brave warriors of light will venture the Chaos Shrine and defeat the force behind all the evil in the world.
Let me just very quickly.
Part's over already. That was fast.
Before you finish the part, let me just really quickly, because I just found it on YouTube and I will link it to you guys. It's called "Working Designs and an Overlooked Legacy." That's a 4-part retrospective. Everybody in the audience, I will tell you everything you need to know. Basically, it's 4 short videos, each of them are like 10 minutes, but they do a good job in consistently explaining you pretty much everything about the company. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, I'll put the link. All right, see ya.
See ya.
See ya.
See ya.
Yeah.